New research indicates that the entire American Southwest and similar latitudes and elevations north and south of the equator around the world are headed for massive, decades-long droughts, worsening throughout this latter 21st century, now conclusively tied to our skyrocketing industrial CO2. From Michigan to California, a number of American towns are literally dying as water shortages, persisting for years, are destroying surrounding agriculture and every other industry servicing farms or farmers. This slowly spreading destruction of human civilization by loss of its number one physical need, the water we are 90% made of, began across Earth in the 1990s. Imminent desertification will be worse than any in over 1 million years, caused by CO2 levels equally unprecedented. I will not speak at length about the obvious need for emergency, permanent measures, much more than the current weak worldwide CO2 emission controls, by new treaties that the worst current offenders might consider not trashing international attempts to achieve for a change. I'm no expert in the field, but this imperative does feature the same success or failure scheme as the necessary crash program to find water for otherwise soon parched to death humanity. Only by drying up government's vast supply of corruption and arsenals will nations and their economies be able to fund water desalination and transport, or find the resources and priorities to retool to low CO2 transportation, power, and industry. My Austin, Texas grows faster than any American city while we've watched our reservoir plunge to 2/3 empty. Southwestern America, like Northern Africa and portions of South America, is becoming a desert with water tables, rivers, lakes, and rain clouds literally disappearing. If we chicken out instead of launching our counterattacks and keep fighting against corruption and weapons, parasite businesses will continue to suck 100 nations into irreversible debt, and both giant superpowers and power-mad, ideology-insane militias will continue to weaponize world war unto extinction. Then no government or national economy will ever find the resources or public service ethic to pour the tens of trillions needed to stop humanity's murder by the double-barreled shotgun of global warming, CO2 accumulation without technological reversal, and water loss without desalination in the century or more interim. Your children barely make it to childbearing age, and their children die of hunger and thirst, actually unhappy to have somehow escaped the bullets and bombs of extinction. Instead, suppose you get busy, like I beg you to. Uncorrupted governments answer to the people who make them stop the bribing, borrowing, and warring and get cracking against our real emergencies. Population is controlled, CO2 is controlled, and the unavoidable century of drying features the massive desalination project to save the world. Most weapons of mass destruction and gross arms industries and invasion armies are eliminated. I hate to sound arrogant, but you've never heard of any other or even lesser strategy to save the world. By making our leaders loving, just, and peaceful, of course. Not to mention practical, smart, and prepared. Isn't it high time to join me in action? Rush Limbaugh's ignorant denials of global warming, likely motivated by his corporate enrichment, certainly anger and frustrate me. But we do have in common enjoyment of a certain challenging expression, don't we? Late-breaking news necessitates one more, very little, very last speech. I recently heard a journalist's report detailing the extent to which elected, not appointed judges are allowed to campaign with donated money, just as legislative and executive candidates do. So we must include all black-robed judiciary in our campaign reform constitutional appeals, lest Lady Justice peeks under her blindfold to continue dropping bundles of cash on her scales, to keep them ruling for fat cats only. Numerous laws pretending to prohibit judges and judicial candidates from personally soliciting private campaign funds have been enacted or ruled for since Florida Supreme Court justices were caught handing down decisions actually ghostwritten by corporate donors and lobbyists. Most of these reform laws allow our judiciary to campaign on money raised for them by independent committees, just so long as each candidate lies that they never asked a soul for $1. 80% of you and I, the general public, continues to believe that judges continue to twist decisions to favor the donors they never solicited. Courts keep proving our suspicions by constantly ruling to allow themselves, legislators, and executives gifts from the very companies who then expect to and do benefit from their rulings, against protecting us from the mercantile predators. Quid pro quo, baby. Their deal to steal our government, our money, our rights, and our safety. All elected public servants invite your millions to me for America's trillions and future to you. You've already got the courtroom picture. The winner of each judicial election had piled up the cash for TV propaganda to overwhelm the less corrupted losers. And just how many did not conspire privately with lawyers and companies to promise and deliver decisions ravaging public benefit for private in return for money they did not ask for? Ha ha ha! Said scam further proven by campaign millions flowing even to judges so dominant we can't even scare up a single opponent from either party per election. The donor's only remaining motive to twist fair and impartial decisions in their favor. The unsolicited money only judicial campaign reform laws deliberately retain 100% of the corruption, only minus permission for the candidates to shout, "Gimme!" in public. Regulations written by the players, wholly PR sanitizing to continue the highway robbery behind the trees, so the millions of commuters sail by oblivious to their own rape. If you bugged His Honor's office, you would have a close variation. You would hear a close variation of this. "Judge, our association of lawyers was never recorded to be contacted or solicited by you, and you're a shoo-in for your next election. But certain decisions you might make favoring deserving public sectors and, coincidentally, us, could spark a certain groundswell against you by troublemaking complainers, so you'll need our money to adjust public opinion and weaken likely new opponents. But should you decide against our profits and for the rebel, we'll make sure our new hand-picked candidate uses every one of those TV ad time slots we'll yank from you to crush your ungrateful ass. And thanks to your own brethren's corporate campaign cash permitting decisions, not a word of our private understanding is publicly illegal, since we've all agreed to retire that business-discouraging, consumer-coddling, utterly outdated Constitution. Now, whenever general public abuse to benefit all corporations does not carry the day in your courtroom, we've prepared your rulings to make specific exceptions in your biggest donor's favor. So you have a nice day while we schedule with your secretary the appointments we'll need to discuss each case that will be brought or defended by us to realign public rights, funds, and safety to benefit just us against competitors and consumers and shut down aggrieved whiners claiming we damaged them. Since the Florida scandals, your decision-writing assistants have, of course, learned to mix, juggle, and redraft our ghostwriting guidance. While executives and legislators are permitted, as judicial candidates are no longer, to spend dozens of weekly hours we pay them for public service, instead vacating their public offices to bludgeon their fat cat puppeteers for bucks from private phone banks, begging for bribes with thousands of quid pro quo public theft and abuse pledges even the NSA hasn't yet tape recorded. We all know, or at least 80% of us do, that laws only stopping judicial candidates from publicly asking, while everybody is still privately getting, are only fraudulent PR, allowing the Universal Committee conspiracies to quietly shovel the ever-expanding truckloads of bribes for 1,000 times public theft returns just further under the table. The most gigantic, evil lie of all, the foundation of America's rape, constantly cited to justify or excuse our leader buying, to enact or court support law after oligarchic law opening filthy floodgates of campaign cash, indisputably political bribery to destroy public trust and benefit for private advantage, conquest, and public theft. That lie is private campaign cash is permitted by and indeed relevant to our First Amendment guarantee of our democratic right of free speech. That amendment says, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Since when did any meaning of free speech include giving a politician more money to buy more ads than any opponent so as to convert unequal campaign power to victory, earning and continuing those gifts by exercising undue government power to favor private interests against public? Oh, but spending more than anyone else for TV ads is his free spending right. And the resulting propaganda preponderance for decisive public mind changing is merely speech we cannot limit, right? Wrong. Since the advent of TV and radio speech time for sale, the strength of American, indeed most of the world's political speech is anything but free, which would require equal time or exposure without cost. Now, personal and corporate riches buy speech 99.9% of us cannot afford. Buy its competitive quantity, buy the politicians, including judges, and buy the election of hand-picked servants of our oligarch dictators. Then the other shoe, the lackeys' quid pro quo public abuse of us, including unrecoverable public debt and world war unto doomsday, keeps dropping on our already battered heads, families, lives, and future. Besides the less than 1 in 1,000 power stealers, we're left to divvy up the remaining microscopic share of remaining free political speech. We shout on soapboxes and rant on the internet. The fat cats hammer you on American Idol. The fat cats hammer you hundreds of millions while you chomp nachos between numbers on American Idol. Money talks while free speech walks. Since 1984 and Animal Farm, some are created more equal than others. Unequal speech opportunity and exposure, political TV time limited or expanded by cash on the barrelhead, is the ultimate unfree speech, sealing their governments, sweet dirty deals, and our sad fates, while and by ruining the vast, powerless majority's free speech rights. Fortunately, every word of our new conspiracy is your plan of action to take back your rights and world before they finish murdering both. Every 1% legal retreat from the public image of total corruption is accompanied by suggesting our ludicrous imagining that this or that soft money adjustment, individual maximum cap, or unsolicited committee restores any impartiality, equal protection, or public interest power. Thus the bribery governments roar on, unchecked. Only their deceptive, cynical money laundering changes brands of detergent. Turns out my worst nightmare related in my early speeches has come true. They're buying the judiciary too. And even unelected federal judges are appointed by corrupt executives representing rich donors and corporate political parties, not you. This, of course, will make our court campaigns and lawsuits more difficult. But let's hope that circuit and appeals court judges appointed without campaign cash on no one's but your payroll, avoiding conflict of interest corporate ties with lifetime appointment autonomy, continue even more thanks to you being exposed to eloquent appeals to restore public rights. You giving the lie to oligarchs' commercial pressure to continue tyranny. So the federal judges should respond constitutionally to a newly, permanently aroused public resistance. But we only have a real chance with judges who spend at least 30 seconds a day actually reviewing and thinking about their job description, the United States Constitution. Make sure your letters occupy them longer than that, and it wouldn't hurt to plug my videos or your own. You judges may be able to twist $1 billion here or $1 trillion there less away from just equal government care than your terminally soiled legislative and executive counterparts. But your powerful legal hands may if the big boys bullying and brainwashing manipulate them, still plunge on their behalf into our government pie, potentially feeding tyranny and war. And you may choose modern power over our founders' justice and knock to the floor our staples of equality and peace. Because you are also, if somewhat less, under attack unto dominance by small, undemocratic men of giant greed, violence, and injustice. Judges, our founders dreamed of the day in writing, in general terms, if not specifically to the letter, when you took a deep, painful breath and included yourselves, all committees and every private individual nickel for favoritism against Republican supreme equal power guaranteed all of us people, in overturning every unconstitutional law permitting any political bribery, I mean contributions. Any idea that our Constitution does not mandate this without amendment is absolutely, thoroughly false. Said opinion does not survive our 22 consultations, nailing painstakingly accurate interpretation of and enforcement arguments for our ever-existing, beautifully complete and applicable Constitution. We are nearing the end of our discussion of what are and are not American and human rights of free speech, equal protection under just law, due process, public, not private service, equal persuasion and campaign opportunity, Republican and Democratic government, and the people's rights of choice for survival, peace, justice, and solvency. Most citizens, including most of you judges, know that by destroying these rights we have nearly completed shattering our laws, lives, and world. My speeches could help, 'cause they're about how and why they gotcha, and how you can kick their butts off the throne. Can anybody show me one word of our founders' directions that don't demand that you, I mean you citizens first and you judges next, restore our rights and future? Government counsel claims that there is a right to privately paid, unequal, political elective office, campaign publicity power. Show us then one word of our founders' directions that even indirectly permit that, or does not prohibit any destructive perversion of Republican democracy that has, in historic fact, long since delivered our government into the military, mercantile hands of absolute power stealers, bringing a rising tide of grief and death to many, perhaps soon all. Show me that one line of the Constitution inconsistent with ironclad opposition to prohibition of such tyranny, and I'll French kiss your iron gate at 20 below zero. We have covered wars, weapons sales, and political bribery causes, including weapon sellers bribing politicians to buy them with our money. I've mentioned poverty stimulating violence to take what you cannot make. I've noted that racial and religious bigotry inspires many militias to pursue hatred and intolerance to power with a lavish supply of weapons to make money in a bad economy. Let's find origins of these connected, sad, desperate, stupid chain reactions and enforce solutions legally. I am the international treaty reforms, national and subnational behavior freak, and I'm also the internet movement to restore national justice enthusiast. We take 'em to court. Another lawsuit. Wars rage between governments, races, and religions in large part because schools do not teach children and parents that no flag, belief, physical trait, or specific supernatural law must ever design or designate a single human being inferior, evil, and an enemy to abuse, tyrannize, and kill. The world history, present and future of vicious prejudice and every other venal, desperate cause of war is required with your reading, writing, and arithmetic. Standardize human respect and love for your nation's school children to qualify for our world treaty. Consider the comprehensive abuse of multitudes by war. National treasuries and private economies are looted, often unto destruction. Resulting poverty drives millions to pick up guns just to put bread on the table. This vicious circle will never stop until enforcement of our new laws and existing ones too. That treaty to slash conventional weapons shrinks war, easing poverty. Unbribed politicians are pushed by huge, democratic, strong, self-interested masses of voters to restrain, not court weaponeers. Children discussing human care and respect instead of madrasa or Cold War style forcing sheep into the jingoistic warrior fold will remind their elders that every different color, custom, belief, and flag deserves respect and care, not contempt, coercion, and death. Someday, people's laws and restraints will diminish the packs of losers and the supply of rifles and artillery shells they are hunting for. Then most will find peaceful jobs in rising economies. Before weapons of mass destruction kill us, we kill them and every other corporate government conspiracy. Our children will rapidly become our leaders instead of our victims, because you and I will elevate our study of real history and current tyranny until we rewrite their textbooks. Or are you going to sit back and let your world die for lack of human family love in law? The few percent of people who initially understand and import the necessity and structure of public love have always sparked the movements to galvanize the rest of us. How many of you will pick one or two of our essential legal reforms, say destroying bribery and most arsenals, to help break evil's financial, martial, and mental power? Just you and I are the big unstoppable beginning to save the world. World citizens, never stop asking, why do so many fight and kill? Hatred, bigotry, corruption, government business, poverty, aggression, weapons. How many school children of each 100,000 or billion spend 5 minutes an hour or year discussing and resolving to overcome our internal and organized, mercenary and emotional drives to steal, dictate, and destroy? Let's write the curriculum to highlight every human subject with his story's design for death and the future interventions, and we mean laws, to redesign for human family public love, equality, and care. I challenge anyone to project a single universal human safety reform success that is not founded on outlawing all bribes and most weapons. I challenge anyone to project a single universal human safety reform success that is not founded on outlawing all bribes and most weapons. Far be it from me to propose dominating schools with peace queer propaganda. For every peace and justice video like mine, show them one that whips up the campaigns for corporate government and endless war, to their advantage of having run the planet for 10,000 years, contrasted with Steve-style fixes. Let the kids ask, how is that system we got working for us? A single class for a single year could network with their number of foreign counterparts, young shadow governments, and reform movements with study, negotiations, and simulated, sped up legal, government, and military changes. By the year, the young'uns' consensus direction and action steamrolls into the evening news. Real voters and governments are shamed into following suit. Most every law I propose, your 10-year-old hammers you with. There's nothing more wise, right, necessary, and childlike than using mom and dad's, not Lockheed Martin's, rules to run the world. My parents and teachers taught me to think like a historian, troubleshooter, and public caretaker. I dream and speak of public conspiracies of love, justice, and peace, and the laws to win them. But if I never do better than my rudimentary speeches, who cares? My match goes out fast without your gasoline and fire. Your organization, legal expertise, research progress, and your government fights to the finish are your love and work to save the world for us and our children. Then we, and especially our children, will become our loving, just, and peaceful leaders. On March 1st, 2015, Senator John McCain revealed that he has had conversations with many Mideast leaders who each promised a full-bore rush to nuclear weapons after Iran negotiated permission to keep enriching uranium and keep plutonium for future bombs. Obviously, next comes Israel's attempt to bomb Iran's nuclear conspiracy off the map. Then massive Muslim collaboration to nail Tel Aviv with an H-bomb missile from some mysterious location. Then world depression and nuclear paranoia. Then World War III escalating rapidly above the nuclear winter threshold. Said chain reaction, close to as certain as one bomb's explosion when two subcritical uranium hunks are put together, and one human race's extinction when governments, by weaponeering and bribery, are left free to plunder and kill. So which one person must get going fast to halt the end game? not somebody else, chump. Most of you Mideast countries have already mounted, internet to streets, the first Arab Spring movements for justice, democracy, and nonviolence. Yes, they wilted, and the tyrants didn't. But now you and every nation's populace on our nearly doomed planet is fully capable of a sustained, precise, legal war to save the world. Ain't I told you exactly how to do it? We pathetic handful of not-so activists have taken our decades to stroke our chins instead of lift one lousy finger. You don't have decades more to mutter that your kids and grandkids might live long enough to defend themselves from us. In a very few years, the Big Bang will set a schedule, a fuse of months, weeks, days, minutes, seconds. Russians, your last resistance leader was murdered by the oligarchy. Now, only millions, carefully asking for reform together, cannot be so easily wiped out. You should watch my other video project, Addicts Recover Forever, Relapse Never. Organisms, individual or collective, only survive deadly habits when they hit bottom, face imminent death, and find the ethical and intellectual strategy to reform by banning their weapons of murder and suicide. It's now or never, kiddies. So let's get cracking. For the first time in 100 years, the Nobel Committee overseeing the annual Peace Prize demoted their chairman. They were distressed by a negative world reaction to recent winners, such as the European Union and the first-year Barack Obama. On the radio, one researcher quoted some of Alfred Nobel's original intentions for his prize. It was to be given for work for a demilitarized world, actual laws to replace competition for military power. His words. Clearly, Mr. Nobel believed that laissez-faire commercial governments exploding worldwide weaponry in service of power and profits cause our terminal holocaust of world war. Thus, only old and new laws enforced for disarmament could bring peace, not to mention survival. Too many modern prizes, realized the committee, were given for rhetoric only, scattering rose petals, pretty please, across a world ever forgetting that all swords slaughter on until disarmament law pounds them into plowshares. Does not all history and our impending extinction tell us that war is the weapons business and peace is not? i.e., outlawing the manufacture and purchase of most weapons and all politicians. Someday, the Nobel Peace Prize will go to us for really saving the world. I'm Steve Race, and I'll be talking to you.